Dr. Mark Changizi here with your Science Moment. Today I'm going to talk about cost-benefit analyses and what they almost never take account of. So, of course, one of the complaints that folks like me on Team Reality talked about since March of 2020 was that those that were saying we have to lock down and shut down and close schools and mask up and eventually all of the vaccine-related things, said we shouldn't even consider the negative sides because the dangers of the pandemic are so great, are so massive that it just trumps any such discussion. And there were mathematicians saying this is a black swan, a rare but not so rare that you can discount it kind of catastrophe that could happen in the negative utilities are so great that we shouldn't worry about the utilities or the disutilities, the negative utilities of doing all of these kinds of interventions. We just have to do them. It was an explicit justification for not doing cost-benefit analyses, which is ridiculously crazy. In fact, prima facie, the worst things that happen to societies aren't done by natural disasters. They're done by other people. They're done by governments and groups of individuals acting usually with moral outrage and justifying the horrible treatment of a class of people. Whether it's on the basis of genes or class or religion or whatever it might be. Those are the dangers. All right, so we've been arguing that, look, they say, you don't believe there's a virus. And of course, we do believe there's a virus. And we say, well, you don't believe there's in cost-benefit analyses, right? Even when we're talking about cost-benefit analyses, usually what we're saying, look, if you do this particular intervention, here's the good things that could happen with these probabilities. Here's the bad things that can happen with these probabilities. And then you can calculate these things accordingly. But one of the things, or one of the classes of things that's usually not on these lists is the ways in which society might shift by virtue of these interventions, which are civil rights violating, and how one group might not comply. They might say, look, I'm not going to do that. And how the other group, because it's a righteous thing that they must do, how they can suddenly start treating that group as an unclean out group that must be dealt with, right? As soon as you start doing these sorts of interventions, those are kinds of possibilities that come up, and those are the most dangerous things that happen in society, right? Not everybody's going to comply for varieties of reasons on whatever the interventions are. Once you start doing civil rights violating things, there will be people who don't comply. And if you're making the case that our society depends on it, well, the other group are almost invariably going to come to treat this group as a danger that needs to be dealt with, just like the unvaccinated had to be dealt with. Just like the unvaccinated had to be fired, had to be banished, prevented from going to public accommodations anywhere, had to be prevented from coming into our country. Still to this day, they can't come into the United States, right? Should be prevented from getting hospitalization, medical procedures at any hospital if you're unvaccinated. Much of the population of the earth came to believe that. And not just people, but prime ministers, leaders, premiers, governors believed this, right? These are the kinds of things that have to be included in the negative utilities. These are almost invariably side effects of engaging in civil rights violating interventions at the societal level. And not only did they not do cost-benefit analyses, but they certainly did not even think through any of this. They just treated it like a SimCity simulation. It's like, well, we'll try these things, everybody's gonna do these things, and we'll see whether it works. And of course, they didn't even do a proper SimCity analysis in the first place. All right. Now, I wanted to follow it up, though, with something that makes cost-benefit analyses more interesting, is that they're not just set in stone, right? I mean, there's the good things that can happen by virtue of the intervention. There's a slow transmission or not slow transmission, depending on how well it works. And there's negative things to the economy and to individuals and things like this. But this facet of it, this facet of the degree to which some people don't comply, is variable, right? That can be changed depending upon you and me. And what we can do is, if more people are in the, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to comply. Now, of course, we may be egging on our treatment as an unclean out group, but I'm willing to endure that. And what should happen next time people say, hey, we're going to do all these civil rights interventions for the good, for the safety, is that we announce right away, I'm not going to do that. All of us say, well, I'm not going to do that. What that means is that we're turning up the dial on the negative utility that's going to happen if they do it. The rest of society is going to potentially treat us even more like an outgroup, an unclean, dangerous outgroup, and we're going to potentially react unkindly. Right? It's not going to be easy. This is going to be a big, negative, divisive piece of the utility calculus because they're going to have to deal with us. Right? So this is something we can change, as people often say, be ungovernable. It's more than that. It's not just that you should be ungovernable, but you need to signal that you're ungovernable right from the start, so that when they're doing the calculations in their head, the utility calculus, either back of the envelope ones or more serious ones, that's part of the calculus. They can see that you and this massive swath of people are ungovernable. And that makes the entire utility calculus, even setting aside civil liberties, completely different, and hopefully weighs against doing these sorts of interventions ever again. And that was your science moment.